A little bit about me is that I used to work in the corporate world. So I was working in the corporate world for about 14 years before I completely burnt out. And I went through the same routine that many people do, chasing the goals, chasing the dreams, chasing the elusive corporate ladder that keeps kind of running away from you. You're like just at the next level, and then it's like, oh, it goes, yeah. And it was really difficult for me at many points of my life in my corporate career, and basically I decided that I needed a change, and that change happened after I burned out. I actually went through a pretty difficult period where there's still a bit of a disconnect between the universe and the world telling me I needed to stop, and me actually accepting and understanding the fact that I actually really did need to stop. So it came quite, I mean, I burnt out, but what does that mean when you say burnt out? I actually fainted. So I had like many of these different episodes that would happen, and my health suffered a lot. And there would be times that I found myself not eating, and bringing my laptop home from work and being constantly the first person in the office and then the last one to leave. And then after I leave, I would have to go and check on my events, etc., and then be attached to my phone. So I went through the whole phase of being attached to my BlackBerry with the BBM pin. I don't know if anybody went through this phase, but the BlackBerry, I slept with it. And in the morning, it would be the first thing I'd check, and all my emails or the messages. And then when WhatsApp started coming in, it's like, oh my gosh, all the WhatsApp messages that would stream. No. Yeah. So I used to live that life, and then I fainted. And then it took a while for me to actually make the connection of, hey, I actually need to stop this life. And this is not something that I want for me, and it's not sustainable for the future. So as difficult as it was for me and my Korean upbringing of me having to cure cancer or work for NASA or do something really profound with my life.
Generally, the Koreans that cure cancer and work for NASA.
I mean, I had very high expectations. I was raised with very high expectations for myself, and I started to cultivate these extremely high expectations for myself. So I never expected anything less than, and obviously that is now cultivated and carried into me today and who I am. And there's certain things I'm working through now as an adult as well, of like conditioning to not have to be perfect and not have to do all the time.
Yes.
Which is something that we'll obviously discuss later on. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about me. And I basically left the corporate world and decided to take a new path. And that path was down this course of wellness. And from leaving a very lavish, nice paying, cushy corporate job, I decided to become an entrepreneur in wellness and take on the very, very big dream of trying to inflict some change in wellness patterns, well-being, and bring that message to the Philippines, where my parents currently live. So I left everything. From doing the whole world tour and working in Europe, then Dubai, I decided, all right, I'm coming back, and we really need a big change. There needs to be some proper change happening in the Philippines, and it needs to start with individuals. And that's where we can create a bit of a domino effect, a ripple effect, because one fire can spark another fire, and it can slowly create little fires all around. And hopefully those fires will grow and ignite in your body. So that's where I am, and that's where I started doing all my certifications, and I'm now in front of you today with Elle talking, and I'm currently in Bali and the tropical background because I got stuck. No, but I started to reframe that mindset of being stuck, and I'm here, and it's been such a beautiful, fruitful time for me because I've been able to create. So
absolutely. I think that's
a bit about me.
It's a beautiful testimony. I think a lot of us have come from that background. Same thing with the burnout. For me, it was adrenal fatigue, and a couple of diagnoses that I was ignoring. And I think whether, you know, you don't have to reach a point of breaking. I think that's the reason why we also want to do this. Well, the reason why we're doing this podcast and the reason why we're doing the work that we're doing is because we know what it feels like. You know, right now, for the words that you hear from our mouths, they may sound enlightened. They may sound, you know, that we're really trying to instill good habits and good well-being. But the reason why we're talking about this isn't because we've got everything, our proverbial, you know what, together. It's because we know what it's like to literally be in shambles, to think that we, you know, to already declare that we are completely certain, and you know, you find the moments in your life where you're certain, that's where you stop learning. And to be so stubborn that, you know, saying, no, this is the direction I need to be going, this is the expectations that the world has on me, the expectations that I have on myself. And Christina said something really powerful, and it's taken X amount, you know, decades for the world and our experience and our biology and our parents and everything to condition us to think that we have to move in a certain direction. But in reality, the things that we seek are already within us. It is our responsibility, you know, if we want that freedom to really be the person that we want to be. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of responsibility and for us to claim the choices that we make. And today, you know, we're going to talk about very, very important choices that we make every single day, all day long, whether we know that we're making these choices or not. And those are our habits. And they're like, what do you mean I'm not making choices? That's what I first thought. I'm like, I'm making choices all the time. But it's about really being intentional and mindful in moment to moment, and not releasing your power to anything. You know, like the most two important things in your life is your time and your attention. So that's what we're going to talk about. What do you do with your time and attention? So Christina, you want to break us open and talk about, like, what are habits? You know, everyone knows this is a good habit, this is a bad habit, but, you know, how major are these things actually?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you say time and attention, Elle, because I was really surprised to learn recently that our attention span as humans is 8 seconds. So that is, at par, or depending on the scale that you're looking at, it's similar to that of a goldfish. So and this is also
we're
why
5 seconds faster than a goldfish. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, we'd like to think so, but this is where everything is going. This is why everything is so instant, right? And we're always online, and we're always and this is why Instagram was so popular, and with the videos, you know, and all of the, I guess, the stimulus that we continually ingest on a day-to-day basis. That stimulus is extremely important. And so that brings me to my next point on habits. Habits are something that you cultivate, and some things that you actually don't realize that you might be getting into, and they start to become an actual habit. And you might not realize that they're a habit, but they're there. A fun fact actually is that more than 40% of the actions that we perform every day aren't decisions. They're habits. They're things that you...
What is the statistic? One in?
It's 40%, more than 40%. Yeah. So more than 40% of our actions that we do per day aren't decisions. So I thought I was in control of my life, and me being the control freak that I am, and I'm still working on that, is, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm in control of my things. I have a plan, I have actions, and I'm creating habits. But they're actually not. I'm not making the decisions. They're already guiding me. They're already leading through. And it's really funny. If you haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend reading Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. And in that book, he actually talks about so many different things to do with habits. So habits go through a habit loop, as per Duhigg. It's basically, it goes through the cycle of having a cue. And that cue is dependent a lot on the location, the time, the emotions that you're feeling at that time. And it could be affected by others, the other people around you, and the surrounding kind of external environment. And the last action that you did could be the cue for that habit. The second is routine. So that routine could be the action of doing something, that actual fact. So me talking to you, you watching me, and Elle this is a routine. This is something that you're doing. It's something that you're creating. It's an action. Biting your nails, flipping your hair, playing with your hair. Right now, I just cut my hair recently, so I'm just trying to keep it out of my face because it's driving me crazy. But this also is a nervous tick, but this is also a routine. This touching your hair. I don't know if you know some friends that do this, like twirl around or start biting their nails. That is a routine. And then the reward. So the pleasure chemicals, the dopamine, that are released into your brain because of that routine, of the things that you did. And it's important, I think, for us to know that when we have bad habits that start to happen, and this started to happen with me, and I will share that I had like a very embarrassing habit that I used to be addicted to, and it was Candy Crush. I used to be like obsessed with Candy Crush. I don't know why, but
I know why.
Exactly.
It's like every time you hit, it's like, it's not the thinning, it's this like sexy man's voice going, tasty.
Yeah. Or Jolly, yeah.
Jolly.
It's and so this thing, it's so many, I mean, they're also very cleverly created to be able to find those little dopamine hits. But this thing for me became a habit. I started playing it as like hey, I'm just doing this for fun, and this is like in between my meetings and me being like very stressed, in my corporate world. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna play this like in between, like when I just need some sort of release and don't want to think about things. And I started replacing that with my meditation with this because it was a faster dopamine hit.
For sure. It's so much harder to remove a habit. It's so difficult. We have to understand it's so difficult to remove a bad habit. You actually do have to strategically replace it. And I mean, just the awareness of the bad habit, I think it doesn't necessarily mean it's like you doing a bad thing. A bad habit could be something that is taking away time and space and attention in your life that can be better put towards something like your well-being. Hey, but guess what? We all want time. We all need time for mindless play. And sometimes a little bit of Candy Crush or video games is awesome. But that's up to you. So how do you become aware? What do you do, Christina, to find the awareness? Because as we said, a lot of the times we make these habits or these little choices habitually that we're not intentional about. Same thing, habit is not necessarily just an action. It can be a thought pattern that loops or ruminates. Like every time you see that person, they get on your nerves, and you go through this little mini story or movie in your mind, and it leads you to act in a certain way. And without an intervention, without you literally stopping and assessing and measuring and doing something about it, it's just going to keep going. And adversely, the good news is when you actually create a routine strategically that is going to be beneficial for you, and you are able to manipulate, your cue, the routine, and the reward, and it becomes a habit. They say about 21 days in a row, it becomes so easy to maintain. And that's the really, really good news. So Christina, how do you become aware first of the habitual patterns that we have?
So it's really interesting because what I do, I wasn't aware of it in the beginning, right? So there are many times where we as humans fall into our habits, and sometimes there is that defense that comes up of, I'm not doing anything wrong. This is not a bad habit. It's like this is not even a habit. This is just something that I'm doing. So that was what was playing in my head when I would do these Candy Crush things as I am sitting in traffic, like super dangerous, like addicted, sitting in traffic, waiting for the stoplight to go, playing Candy Crush. I'm like, no, this is not a habit. Like, total denial, like completely, like they're totally putting my life in danger while I am driving.
Dopamine. You're getting something out of it.
Exactly. And I mean, I think we have to actually strip this back a little bit and look at what happens first during a habit, because dopamine surges happen when we get our reward from the activity in a habit, right? Usually that's what usually happens. Like, oh, I am going to go eat that chocolate. I have this chocolate in my mouth. Oh, it tastes so good. Yum. Dopamine hit. So your brain starts to correlate like the action of eating that chocolate with yummy, and it merges and you get that hit. But when you do this frequently, that's when cravings start to happen, right? And that's like the fourth part of in the power of habits, which is the cravings. Like the cravings start to happen because your brain starts to rewire after having done something frequently. So it's like your brain starts to spike the dopamine rush even before it happens. So if I eat chocolate all the time, and lately I have been guilty of eating quite a bit of vegan chocolate because Bali is just
Oh yeah, at least you're eating vegan
full of the
chocolate.
vegan
I'm like
chocolate.
straight up Chips Ahoy in the province
Oh,
of the
yeah,
Philippines.
yeah. That's also really yummy. But I'm trying. I'm like,
It's
that's
not a
my
habit. It's not a
justification.
habit.
I'm like,
Christina. It's just something I do. It's not a habit. It's not a habit.
no,
It's not a habit. It's something I do
I'm
every
like,
day.
no, but I'm like, oh my gosh, well, like it's vegan, so this is totally fine. It's like totally okay for me to be
Even 20
eating
pieces is
vegan
totally
chocolate
fine.
all the time, like constantly. And that's where I'm creating a habit, right? Because
Yeah.
like I already know what it's gonna taste like. I'm like, yes. So even before like I do anything, like I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you about this, and I have this craving now for chocolate because
Anticipation.
I'm like, oh, that anticipation, I know what it's going to taste like. So the action of me putting that in my mouth, that's creating that craving already. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you knowing that happens, I think it's important to strip that back. Now, knowing your facts about habits and some of the things that we've just kind of gone over, where in your life do you feel as though you have these cravings or these longings? So not even a craving, but the longings that you have for something, like even before it happens. So I think that's where mindfulness really comes into play, and for you to be able to take a step back into your life and maybe look at some sort of model. Maybe we could walk them through something that we created. So there's so many different areas of your life that you can look at, and there's so many ways of tackling your life and habits and where bad habits are created. But I think the first is in recognizing what is happening in the different areas of your life and seeing where you are maybe forming habits that are not necessarily promoting you in the best way.
That's a really good question to ask. And, obviously when we talk about mindfulness and those who have adapted a mindfulness or meditation practice, it doesn't mean that you're just, only practicing mindfulness when you're sitting on a mat. Practicing mindfulness is practicing a complete present awareness. And when we are on a mat, we exercise that mindfulness by bringing our attention back to the breath. Because as she said, our minds are naturally completely rampant, and our brains are actually hardwired to notice bad things and problem solving, because that's how evolution has created us, to find out, to make sure that we survive in order to pass on a gene. Important thing to understand, with when it comes to our habitual thinking or these patterns, it is very easy to believe, and this is, how it was for me, that, oh, you know what, it's just the way that I am. I can't really change that. I love chocolate. It's just one thing that I'm not able to give up, or I just lack the motivation. And I think that's just, I mean, that's how I am. So I can't really change who you are. Well, let me just bust that myth. As we mentioned earlier, this is not just a hippy dippy, yoga class or mindfulness talk. This is something that has been research, evidence-based and scientifically proven, as we see that we grow up with these different agreements that are created in our minds, that we accept as truths. And they're truths that we accept even as we're children. When we do something wrong and we get punished and we feel sad, and we correlate that sadness to the fact that we did something wrong, there's that immediate, unless there's that explanation, it's just very, very easily to be done, because we're such sponges that we're creating data and information and creating systems into our brain, which is that computer, at such a young age. And without the knowledge or understanding, those wires can get really, really crossed, and we can have really unfair, untrue realities in our mind about our self-worth and our deserving, about our own capability. And that can be very, very dangerous. But the good news is, if those things can be wired through conditioning, they can be unwired. And with intention and with motivation and with the little tips and tools that Christina and I are going to talk about, you can find different simple things to incorporate into your life, different simple habits that will rewire those neural pathways in the way that you want, so that you are making decisions, you are mindful in the choices that you make. And a great question to always ask is, when you catch yourself, should I keep with this habit or not? Is asking, you know, is this contributing to my well-being? Is this contributing to where I want to be and who I want to be? And sure, you don't have to ask that about every single thing. Like if I have a piece of Ferrero Rocher and I say like, do I eat this? Is this contributing to my well-being? Well, it could contribute to my pleasure and my recreation and my reward if I just did, you know, like a nice long run. So that's the good thing, is that's entirely up to you. It's you tailoring that to yourself. But the one thing that I ask, and you don't have to do it with us, is just do it for yourself. Coming from someone who's lied to herself for the first, you know, however many decades of her life in denial, because I thought and did and said what I thought I should think and do and say. You got to be honest with yourself. Even if you don't say it out loud, just be really honest with yourself and bring that honesty into what Christina and I will talk about now, into the most important aspects of your life. You probably heard this thing called the wheel of life. And it's been explained, you know, in Maslow's basic human needs. A lot of people have different versions of this. What Christina and I, you can choose the version that you want, of course. This is entirely up to you in your practice. But Christina and I are going to go through some basics. The reason why this is so important, in anything that you want to do, in anything that you want to be or accomplish, and anything that you want to contribute into the world, into your relationships, into yourself, all of those things, those doings, are a direct manifestation of who you are and how you are being. And if you are not intentional about how you are being, you leave all those beautiful aspects of your life to chance. Yes, you're doing them, but it's not intentional, and you're losing a lot of time. And so I really encourage you, because this has brought so much profound meaning into my life and into the beautiful aspects of my life, is to sit down, take the time to sit down and write your intentions. Like, what do I actually want? You know, what do I want in my relationships? What do I want out of my mental and emotional health? What do I want about my success or my vocation? You know, what do I want to get out of my health and fitness? And these all vary from person to person. You don't have to need to be like a complete, you know, like a pro athlete to want to have a great, you know, and fruitful or piece of that pie of fitness. It can be whatever contributes best to the life that you want to lead. And that's what we're going to discuss. I think, Christina, do you want to go over the different splices that we've discussed and why those are actually part of the wheel of life?
Sure. So tagging on to what you said, I think it's also in terms of habits and obviously moving into the wheel of life. I think it's important for us to, one, be mindful, but also recognize our cognitive dissonance. So knowing when it's basically, cognitive dissonance is exactly as it is. Cognitive, like knowing the behavior goes against the action that you know. So it's like, if I don't know, for smokers, for example, it's like, I know this is really bad for me. This is killing my lungs and it causes cancer, etc. But I'm doing it because like it gives me pleasure. So this is there's a dissonance there in that effect. So recognizing that and kind of taking just maybe the next moment to let that land and be like, oh, what are some areas of my life that this is happening in? And we'll put that into this wheel format that Elle and I have kind of put together. So as she mentioned, there's so many different types of wheels of life that you can go through. And this is something that we actually do in coaching as well, like in the beginning. So before we start with a client, if you know, we're not sure of where to start, this is a great place to go to. But Elle and I made it simple for today, and we created 6 slices basically, and I'm going to show you my excellent wheel that I've drawn. I really
did you color inside the lines this time, babe?
No, I created, so this is my wheel. Okay, wait, this is really
cute.
This is my wheel. Clearly I have many strengths and weaknesses, but this is a weakness of mine. This
How
is
do
a
we-
wheel. You can kind of see the circle, basically, general circle, because I don't have a compass, like, and try to fill in, like, maybe create 6 slices of your wheel, like I have so artfully done in my fantastic representation of a wheel here. So just label them 1 through 6. So 6 slices, and in those 6 slices, each slice represents something. So imagine that if you take a kind of peripheral view of your wheel, or you're taking like a meta view of your life right now, in this wheel, write down relationships for the first one, for example. So one of the slices of the wheel is going to be relationships, and relationships could be, they're not just your relationships with your significant other, or if you currently are single, like it's with everybody in your life. So anybody that you have a relationship with, your mother, your father, your sister, your coworkers, your friends. And one of the things that I want to invite you to look at here in the spectrum of relationships is also your relationship with yourself. Because this is one that we as humans tend to forget about. We're like, oh yeah, relationships, and whatever your mind goes to, the first thing that it goes to. Some people might be, oh, relationships, oh, love, immediately, oh, yeah, significant other, or relationships, oh, like something that's weighing you down, oh, my relationship with my family, or maybe something that there's a disconnect in at that present moment of time. But one of the relationships I really, really do encourage you to look at, and is really important for all of us to really check in with, is your relationship with yourself, because we forget about that a lot. And your relationship with yourself stems, like everything else stems out from that important
Absolutely.
factor, yeah. So relationships. Second is vocation, so your job, and your wealth. So financial security, so that could be money in easy terminology. Third one is your health, and that could be your physical health right now, and fitness, as fitness plays quite a large role in that segment. Fourth is something that I personally feel extremely, I feel so strongly about this segment, and it's something that we don't pay as much attention to. And this again correlates back to the relationship with ourselves, is the mental and the emotional sector of your life. So everything that affects you mentally, maybe anxiety, maybe feelings that come up that you might bottle up or share, or whatever you choose to do with these, they're there. And I think it's extremely important for you to take a cursory glance now and delve deeper into this a little bit later on where I am in my mental and emotional state. This is a truly, on the surface, it might be like, yeah, my mental, my emotional, I did a check-in. Yeah, I feel okay. I feel good. I feel fine. But there might be many, many things under that surface that you haven't addressed yet, and that are extremely important for you to delve a little bit deeper into.
That's so.
Fifth one.
Give a quick sidebar for that, guys. This is probably one of the most important slices of that pie. That's your engine, anything, your frame of mind. And that's why, I'm so glad that Christina's here, because she explains it so beautiful. Your frame of mind is, and in yourself, everything flows out of that. If you cannot love yourself, how can you love other people? If you cannot appreciate beauty in yourself, how can you appreciate beauty and gratitude in the things around you? If you cannot,
yes,
when you cannot be strong and know what your character strengths are and be confident in that, how can you expect to use those strengths in your work? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And the feeling of, oh no, I think I'm good, overall I'm pretty happy. Take it from a sister who thought she was happy. I was always seen as someone who is like bright and bubbly, optimist and all that, but it was because I was striving. Gotta be good enough. Gotta be worth it. I have to be deserving. And so good. Even on the surface, if that is what is what it looks like, It really is up to you. No one else can tell you. You have to have an honest dialogue within yourself. I exuded that persona inside. It was a world of, it was, I had deep shame and unworthiness. And that part, it's amazing how the ego tries to protect itself. And it's just basically, if you feel you are worthy, if you feel you are deserving, if you love yourself, if you know that you are good enough, the striving part, I promise you, you don't have to strive. You do and you act in accordance and congruence with who you are. The striving is not existent anymore. You just worry about loving yourself and being. And I promise the rest does follow. Anyway, Christina, continue.
No, that's so beautiful, Elle. It's so raw, and it's so there's such strength in your vulnerability that you just shared, right? And it's just, yeah, it's from such a real place, and I felt that as well. And it's funny because there are many people that have a facade that they put up on the outside. And many of these people are type A personalities like me.
I still put that facade up sometimes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny because I'm gonna drop a little yoga like bomb here. But yeah, it might be a little on the precipice of quite spiritual, but it's just food for thought for any of you watching. So something I've been working on, and this is not really talked about much in like the yogic scriptures. So the yogic philosophy that I'm studying right now is the tantric philosophy, and by tantric, it's the classical tantric philosophy, which I'm delving into, not the neo-tantric where people generally associate tantra with sex and lust and the sensuality, which there are elements of that, of course, but this is more, there's a segment called the malas that I've been working with this entire month. And there is one mala called the karma mala, which is the bondage of action. And that's something, and these malas are supposed to be your veils of untruths. These are the veils that that are shrouding you from the truth about yourself. And yeah, I'm just dropping a little philosophical bomb here. Might land, it might not, but for me, it was quite important. It was quite difficult to swallow this pill or like undo that veil, like to remove that veil from myself, because it's supposed to be the veil or the bondage of action, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if I don't act, what is my purpose? What do I do with myself?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Prove that I'm good enough.
Yeah. Who am I? Where is my worth going to come from? I don't act, then I can't create. I can't do things.
Yeah.
Then how am I going to make a profound impact on the world? How am I going to leave my legacy? How am I going to be, I. And then I was like, but then checking in with I and me, I started to shift my thinking and look at the being part, because obviously we're human beings and we have the doing part that you so, beautifully articulated. And then we have our doing, like we have our being and our doing side. And we always tend to go towards the doing, right? The I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to have this house, I need to have this car, I need to have this, so that I will be fulfilled. But then we always forget about the being. What about the being part? And by being, I don't mean just like being totally lazy and watching Netflix and just chilling and like, being like, yeah, Christina told me to be. I'm just like piecing out now. By being, I mean, it's by letting the things happen and by going internally and looking inside you and seeing what's happening and doing that check-in with yourself. Like, hey, I can just be right now. I don't constantly have to do. And that's something I wanted to share that's quite personal, because I used to, and I still am working on this a lot, is basing my self-worth and what I feel my contributions are to society with action, right? With just acting. And I'm like, what can I do? But then I sit here and then I'm in my being state. And I realize that I'm still turning oxygen into carbon dioxide. And I am still, I am still here. And in this being state, there are many things that come up, because when you're being, you're not, your brain has more space to be able to check in with yourself. And you're able to create a little bit more more entry points for you to just be. And sometimes when you're being, there's a really powerful psychosomatic connection that starts happening, and you start to feel lots of things. Like, for example, I today just sat for 5 minutes, and I was purely in just a state of being. I was sitting and I was like, and it wasn't even spacing out, because I had certain thoughts circulating in my head, but I was just enjoying the art of being and just sitting for a moment. But then lots of things came up, because thoughts obviously start to circulate. And then I started feeling a lot of different emotions that I think I had been suppressing. And I've been like, no, I don't have time for you right now. Like, go away, just, and with the being part, they just start to come up to the surface. And they're like, hey, remember us when you were too busy to, to address us? So yeah, it's I think it's really important to do that. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to share that with you.
But that's I like that,
adding on to
that's one of those. I mean, we'll talk about keystone habits in a little bit, but that's one of those things that is a huge part of at least the habits that I make sure that I do probably first thing in the morning. And we'll talk about routines, like what we do specifically. But it's just the thing is, we have to understand just really quickly the neuroscience behind the thoughts and striving and doing. When we're in this mode, we're often reactionary, even habitual at sometimes, because we get swept away in the actions that we do. I know I get swept away. I have ADHD. I get swept away in a lot of different things, and my reactivity to that means like that emotion, that task, that thought is sweeping me, rather than me, addressing that thought and emotion as a separate entity, not me, but a separate entity. And when we can stay in that being state, we actually, if you want to make it, address it in a clinical state, we actually reach this place where we fortify our parasympathetic nervous system. And when our parasympathetic nervous system brings our sympathetic nervous system back to baseline, then the body can actually heal. And one of the things that the body heals itself, most importantly, is stress. Stress that we have in that current moment, stress that we have in things that we've left unaddressed, stress that we have in conditioning, stress that we have trapped in our body. The thing is, the body knows what to do. And when we access that state of being, we look at our circumstance, at our tasks through a different lens or focus, because we all know stressful thoughts, emotions, they tend to spiral down. And so when you focus on them or are swept away by them, they broaden and build on top of the other. And you actually have this narrow vision. If anyone's been to a beautiful meditation class and come out and be like, I'm so in touch with the universe, and then you get in your car and then like someone cuts you off and you're like, and it's like, how did that happen? It's exactly what happens. That's human beings. That's us. I do that all the time. I mean, it's a practice. It's a lifelong practice. But the point of taking that time to focus on your breath, to not react to those thoughts, to just observe them, and then you do actually access that higher frequency of thinking. Your body does know how to slowly piece away the parts of it that no longer serves you. And the body does know eventually how to bring up the things that you have not addressed. So that's actually a good thing.
And it's actually homeostasis, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's your body's ability to maintain this like beautiful like balance of everything inside. So, that it kind of, despite all of the changes, the external temperatures, the environment, everything that is happening outside, it's still able to maintain this beautiful temple that you live in. And that's beautiful. I mean, homeostasis.
It's simple. It's
And
not easy.
that
It's
is
like
ignited.
one
Yeah.
thing. It's one thing that we can do to balance all of, regardless if you have a busy life or not, if you have a phone or a television, there's too much stimuli in your life. If you just sit down for a few moments throughout the day, then you're able to actually, the body's so beautiful, it is designed to know what to do later on. Sorry, that's my fiance. Just like me.
Edward, yes. Okay.
Okay, so now that when we have those 6 splices, Christina, what do we do with them?
Yeah. So I'll go over the slices again in case everyone, like didn't catch them. So the first, obviously, relationships. Second is vocation and wealth. Third is your health and your fitness. Fourth is your mental and emotional state. And fifth, I don't know if I addressed this earlier, but it's your spiritual, it's spiritual. It's your spiritual and your purpose. And this can be interpreted in any way that you currently feel it resonates the best with you. And sixth is play.
Yes.
So
Tell me about play.
Play is fun and recreation. It's what you do for fun. It's what you do for you. It's what you do to have a good time. It's what you do to enjoy your life. It's what you do, fun and recreation.
And if your profession, by the way, that doesn't count.
Exactly.
If it's your profession, like if you do sports for a living, or if you paint for a living, or if you do all these awesome things, or if you work at daycare for a living, then that doesn't count. Play needs to be something that is mindless. You have no obligation to try and succeed or strive for anything. It is you simply being in the moment,
and enjoying
yourself to let go of any judgment or preconceived notion or anything that you have to do. You don't have to do anything. You just, that was the craziest thing when I was a borderline adrenal fatigue. My doctor's like, just, adult coloring books. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But just
hey,
whatever it is for you, but Candy Crush can be a little bit of play, right?
I think it's there are certain things in life that are a lot more difficult to resist than than not. So yeah, I would not recommend Candy Crush for the play part, but from speaking from personal experience, having really rerouted my brain out of that.
Gone to Candy Crush rehab.
Oh my gosh, yes, and putting myself through that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I need to play.
So once you have all these 6 slices, I guess you define for yourself what that is, what play is to you, what relationships is to you, and then what do they do? How do they actually, once they have these slices, what do they do with it?
I think it's important to know these slices obviously quite well, and knowing where you stand with those slices right now. So rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you currently in your life right now? So 1 to 10, 10 being incredible, nothing can change, I'm just so happy with it. 1 being there's lots of room for improvement. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on these little sectors, the little slices of the wheel. I'm not gonna show you mine again in case this is quite embarrassing.
All right, I took a screenshot. I'm gonna post it on social media.
Thanks. I didn't even write this properly. I wrote this out here because I didn't have enough space. But anyway, this wheel. Thank you all. This will forever be the wheel that I drew. The most
beautiful.
Next time I'm going to have like a cup or something, and I'm going to trace around the cup and be a lot more prepared. But anyway. So when you have this wheel, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 of where you are, and maybe start having a look at where you have habits. What are some good habits that you really like about these sectors in your life? And what are some of the bad habits? And I think then you can start to root down or start to pull out your key habits. So your keystone habits. These are like your main monumental habits that spark another habit. The keystone habit is actually something that you can do to kind of celebrate and enjoy that small win, and then it tumbles into another habit that it basically creates an opening for another habit to take place. So for example, a keystone habit of mine is waking up early. This has always been my a thing that I do, regardless of whatever I did the night before, how late I slept the night before, or whatever. This has always been a keystone habit of mine. I always wake up. Literally, I've since being in Bali, and after doing the whole yoga teacher training, etc., I've been going through. I started cementing what I call or what is called a sadhana, a morning sadhana. So for those of you not familiar with the sadhana, it's basically, it literally means accomplishing, it means a means of accomplishing something. So in yogic tradition, it's any spiritual exercise. It's really more the morning routine that you set for yourself. It's your morning space. It's the morning kind of intentions that you start to create for yourself. So I have a whole morning sadhana that I do. And so my keystone, going back to this, my keystone habit is my waking up early. My early already gives me a small win, being like, oh, I woke up early. I feel great. I've already accomplished something. And then I go through something funny. Like I actually go through a part of, so I do half of my morning routine is a bit of what Jim Quick does for his morning routines. And part of it is a yogic sadhana practice. So I have like so I'll just run you through my morning routine. Basically, I basically wake up and I go through the whole hygiene process of like brushing my teeth, washing my face, etc. Showering sometimes, and no, I mean like I shower like 2 times a day. So I'm trying to not be too
You're trying to
too
conserve
meticulous
water.
with my, yes, exactly. I'm trying to not shower like so much anymore. But yeah.
I love it.
But anyway, yeah, so I basically go through that whole hygiene process, and then I sit with myself and I meditate. After I meditate, oh sorry, before that, so I wake up in the morning, and the actual first thing I do, before the whole hygiene, etc., so the first thing I do, I wake up and I, like, if I have any dreams that I remembered, I have like a journal in my like next to me, and I write like what dreams or what thoughts I had waking up. So that's like immediately like my first habit. And something, I don't know, for those of you who had been on my previous like journaling talk, but I basically have now replaced reaching for my phone with reaching for a journal. So that has been a huge game changer for me, like a big one, because
Replace an old bad habit.
yeah. And so basically I don't wake up anymore with an alarm as well, because my body wakes up anyway. Like it's already attuned and acclimated to waking up. So I wake up without fail at 5:50 a.m. without fail. Like I just, and I'm like, oh, sometimes I'm like, no, body, I'm not ready to wake up yet, but I'm already up. It's awake. Like my mind's alert. I'm awake. And I'm like, oh, okay. So after that, I do a body scan. After writing down my vivid dreams, if I had any, or if I have any thoughts that I woke up with, I write them down. And it's just a really quick, and then I let that go. And then afterwards, I do a body scan before I get out of bed. I'm like, okay, just taking a moment to just connect with myself again in my body. And I'm like, all right, what's happening in my body? Okay, these are what's happening in my body today. And then I get out of bed, and then I do my whole morning hygiene routine. After that, I sit and I meditate properly. I meditate on some of the thoughts that came up, because sometimes a thought triggers another thought. And sometimes when I'm writing, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, there's something that happened. Usually I'm ruminating over something, or either with my body scan, I'm ruminating over something like, oh my gosh, my body is feeling weird today, or oh, while I brush my teeth and go through that hygiene process. And then when I sit and meditate, I just kind of, sometimes it depends on the meditation I'm going for that day, but I sit on it, or I let it go, or I just circulate, or I heal myself. So there's many different types of meditation tactics that you can go for, but I meditate. And meditation is something that I find very difficult for me still. I'm not the best. I used to say that I'm not the best meditator, and I found that that was not true. So it's something that I am delving deeper into.
It's funny when you say that. It's like when we say automatically because of our previous experience, oh, I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
Very, very, and meditation and mindfulness helps us to be aware of the words that we say to ourselves. Because those thought patterns, yes, they are not us, but we've allowed them to happen. And so as a result, we actually act. Our behaviors reflect those thoughts, whether we want to believe that or not. And so when we say, oh, I'm not good at meditating, it's like we're certain. It's a certain thing. Like, I'm not good at meditating, which means that's who I am. It's just the way it is.
It's a limiting belief. Yeah.
And the moment we go back into being in the eyes of a child, not meaning being juvenile, but the eyes of the child meaning, hey, guess what? I don't know. Let's find out. Maybe not.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so so yeah, I used to approach this as being like, oh, I'm not good at meditating. I'm not really good at sitting with my thoughts. I'm like, it's not my thing. I'm not very good at it. And like, I should be, because like I am in wellness, and I'm now, my life is geared completely towards wellness, and I'm an avid yoga practitioner, and I'm, trying to really just step into the best version of myself. I'm like, meditation needs to be a part of this. But then I started rewiring my thinking, and yes, it is a limiting belief. And I actually had to stop myself there again, because it's still something that I'm rewiring my brain to think or to say. And I'm accepting that meditation is just being, and like, you can do open-eyed meditation. So for some people who have gone through trauma, for example, it might be quite traumatizing and triggering to close your eyes and go inwards. So you can do open-eyed meditation. You can just sit and be with nature and be present and completely present in the moment. And that could be meditation as well. So it doesn't have to be done in any sort of way at all. It's really what's right for you.
yes.
So that is something that I am working on, and I'm learning, and I'm enjoying actually just that peace, that beautiful peace in the morning where I just sit with myself for 20 minutes. Or sometimes I lie in meditation for 20 minutes. It depends how my hip flexors feel and my lower back feels, because I'm getting older now, and like these things happen to your body. So yeah. But I do that, and then I basically do breathing exercises. I do a whole breathing segment. Right now I do my kriyas, so yogic breathing, kind of fire belly breathing as well. But recently I've been playing around with different methods like Wim Hof and Joe Dispenza, just doing different types of breathing methodologies. But I'm sticking, so I add that onto my initial breathing. So obviously this takes a lot of time. And then after all of that, I'm like, oh, what else is coming up for me? And then I journal a lot, and I just let my pen just flow. And sometimes I rather not type them out, but because pen to paper always has it creates a different sort of sensation, and it creates a different sort of link to your mind. So
how do you journal?
What do you mean, how do I journal?
So I mean, sometimes with journaling, there's a lot of different techniques. Sometimes people might not know exactly. So how should I journal? Do I just say what is happening in my head, or is there something I want to address? Do you have a specific routine of how you journal in the morning based off of how you journal later on, or you just listen to your body and kind of adapt to, okay, well, this is what I need to address.
Really,
I'm going to journal that way.
How do you journal? That's a really because I never actually thought about how I journal. It just happens. I think it really depends on the person, right? It's what feels right for you. It's what you feel you need to release onto paper. For me, journaling is a bit of like therapy. So if there's still stuff that I'm holding on to, or there's thoughts that I woke up with, or after this whole, like ruminating, like hygiene technique, I start journaling about things that are popping up in my head, or things that I'm letting go of, or just sometimes I just journal words. It's really weird. It's just my felt sense words. like of the whole experience that I went through, like deep, heavy, strong, like triggering, like all of these emotions that I'm feeling.
I think it's also because when we think about journaling, and I think you and I have a very similar method to the way we journal. Not all the time, because there's the sense of journaling like my diary. Dear diary, this is what happened today, and this is what my life looks like, so that in the future I can look back and be like, oh, how beautiful is my life. Or dear diary, I just need to like let out like and rant. What journaling I see helps for you, and what helps me as well. A lot of the times when we ruminate on thoughts, those thoughts are not actually decided thoughts. They can be feelings that are mixed, and we jumble them up in different ways in our brain. But unless we commit them to paper, unless we commit them to words, saying it in front of a person, they become this ambiguous, vague thing that we actually misinterpret in our heads. When they stay in our heads, we feel moments of anxiety because this happened, and like I got interrupted in the morning, and so my entire schedule is moved back. And in our heads, we're just feeling frustrated and disappointed, and that's it. That's how we leave it. But sometimes we need to make sense of what those thoughts are, because when we find that we actually, and the whole purpose of meditation and mindfulness is to observe, and observe, that way we know what to address. In order to find out where you're going, you need to have a really good understanding of where you are. And so when you come up, even if you don't really know what you're thinking, I don't know why I'm feeling bad, and you just write those words, heavy, drained. Eventually, what we see over time with practice, when we start to define what these are, and we start to try and create sentences, because that's what literature or writing is, you create thoughts and constructs, so they have to make sense. And sometimes when they actually don't make sense, that's you disproving some random irrational thought you had about yourself. And it helps. It's therapy. It allows you to like address it or move it, or sometimes even define it. Like a lot of the times I would used to wake up with these huge surging palpitations in my chest. And all I could think about is, I'm running behind. I'm not doing enough. I'm running out of time. And the long list just keeps piling and piling until, you start to sit with yourself. And that morning routine, I very, very rarely, nor ever usually want to say this is something you should do, because, to each his own. But I think if you do not have a practice in the morning for yourself, in silence, in solitude, in stillness, for you to claim the lens through you view your day through, you're missing out, because you are so vulnerable when we wake up to all the stimuli that's vying for your attention, including that inner chatterbox. My goodness, the inner chatterbox. So when you spend this time, it may be tedious in the beginning. It may be like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of sitting here and noticing my breath and writing words on paper. That's fine. You're getting to know yourself. You're getting to know how to be comfortable with yourself. And then before you know it, it becomes something like this rich relationship, like Christina said, this rich relationship that you cultivate day by day. And it just brings you, like what you said, back to homeostasis, back to baseline. And when you can find stillness and you can breathe and be, the rest of the day doesn't seem so scary. I mean, so it does, like in the afternoon when mindfulness has waned over. That's why I usually have to do 2 or 3 times.
Or you can like take a step back in your day and just take a moment to breathe and just like calm your parasympathetic nervous system and just breathe. Or if you can't do that, actually, I'm going to retract that. I think anyone can do that at any point of time. If you can go to the bathroom, if you have time to eat, you can definitely take a moment to just take a step back and just breathe and just be with yourself. Honestly, it helps. It does. Like if you want, I mean, please feel free to reach out to us. There's so many different types of breathing tactics that you can do that honestly, like, just take you down. Take that parasympathetic nervous system.
Give us one simple one real quick.
Pranayama breathing helps a lot. So there could be, you don't have to cover your nostril, but this actually helps a lot. So you can actually, these two alternate between your ring finger and your thumb, and you can cover one nostril and just breathe in through this nostril for 4 breaths. hold for 4 breaths, exhale for 8 breaths, and then switch over and do the same on the other side. There's so many ways that you can do this. There's so many ways that it's taught in the yogic world as well, but this actually just helps because it's you're balancing your the energies within each side. So that really helps. Or even just breathing through. Like if this is weird for you, and if you feel like, oh my gosh, my coworkers are going to look at me like, what the heck is she doing?
I mean, what if
He or she.
a really good,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we don't have enough time to go into it, but that's a really good intervention. If you're worried about your coworkers doing, sometimes like you need to just, you know what, just do it, because that's you setting boundaries and you saying like, you know what, I am going to be myself and I'm going to, because at the end of the day, like what's really keeping us back from our well-being is our inability to, or our hindrance from claiming our freedom at the end of the day. Freedom to make
The claiming of the freedom.
Freedom to make our
Definitely.
choices. Freedom to speak out in the way that we feel and not having it clouded by other people and what they think. And yes, freedom doesn't mean I'm just gonna fly and there's no consequences. Freedom is actually discipline, and
it's liberation.
Exactly.
It's claiming liberation.
And we'll explain how
yourself.
this freedom can reflect in your habits. One thing that's a good news, because Christina and I have this tendency where we start talking and then just like all of a sudden it's 4 o'clock in the morning and we're like, where did the time go? So this is, we're going to have Christina on regularly, because I just think she's an amazing person and she has a lot to share from her own experience as well. I think it's so important and to have community. So let's just said, we want you to share with us if there's something specific that you want. We're creating this content for you and not just for our own entertainment. And we will dive further into, I mean, it's fun to look at Christina's like miniature drawings. I'm going to post it.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
wow.
what was I saying? Yeah. So moving back, I do want to address that we will be talking about more into detail and diving deep on what those habits could look like, because sometimes, you know, when you're starting from scratch, when I started from scratch, I basically just had to Google what are good habits. And we'll cite some literature like The Power of Habit, Atomic Habits by James Clear is also really good. But let's just go back to the framework, something really simple that you can take home with you. So you have this wheel. You listed what those 6 slices are. You listed what is it to you? Like, is my spirituality my Christianity, or is my spirituality my joy and my gratitude? Do I find spirituality in the way that I contribute to others, the way that I'm a good father, the way that I lead a good example and leave the world a better place? That can be your spirituality. Same thing with relationships. What relationships do I want? What do I want to get out of work? And then basically when you have this, and this is basically the things that you want out of your life with your true self, then we go into rerouting the cognitive dissonance. When we make strategies based off of those priorities in our lives. And when we make strategies, we know, okay, we define what are the different habits that will get me from point A, where I am, which I need mindfulness and self-awareness to find out where I really am, honestly. What strategies do I need to take me from point A to point B of the relationship slice? Is it with my mother? Should I, well, obviously the 3 things that you do to actually put worth into something is your time, your attention, and, you know, the actions that you take, your behaviors that you do to cultivate what those slices are. So what can I do to cultivate the relationship with my mother? I spend time, I take time out of my week. How much time do I want to give? How much attention? So that doesn't mean like when I'm on the phone with her, I'm just texting. I'm on the phone with her and I'm giving her my complete attention. Don't multitask when it comes to that. And you know, what do I do to contribute to her life? Do I write her a gratitude letter, you know, once a week, or say, hey, you know what, I really noticed, and I want you to know that I appreciate your character strength of gratitude, or your joy. You always know how to make me smile, and I just want to know that I appreciate that. That does something to her. That does something to me. So these 3 things are simple little habits that I can strategize throughout my week or plan. And then I highly suggest that you get a habit tracker, please, because what doesn't get tracked doesn't get measured, doesn't get optimized. If we don't write it down, if we don't set aside time for it, if we don't schedule it or block time off for it, we leave it our time to randomness. And the vacuum of randomness, my goodness, coming from an ADHD person, everything's exciting. So yeah, So Christina, what are the different strategies? And then I want to go through that real quick, and then I want you to talk about the cues and how to strategically manipulate the cues and the different, you know, the different little hacks into creating a good habit.
Okay, so in terms of like, okay, so knowing where your habits are with that little wheel that I had showed you that we had drawn. Showing it again, just for good
I don't
measure.
want to throw it away. I really want to frame it.
No. So on this wheel, looking as Elle mentioned, looking at where you are in each of these and knowing exactly what is coming up for you. So tracking your habits. If it's, for example, health and fitness, oh, I want to be a little bit more active in the day, or I you know, I want to feel more fit, or I feel like I want to get more, just moving more, then allocating a little bit of your time, like, so allocating what, 30 minutes, 20 minutes per day over like a period of 21 days, for example. Once you start getting that in, like, and tracking it, like, okay, as an example, I'm going to start walking today. Maybe I don't walk lately. I'm going to start walking today. And right now, you know, COVID, we could be walking in our houses. We could be walking in like our backyard, or maybe we're just counting steps on, you know, back and forth from like the bathroom to the kitchen or whatever. But you're walking, you're keeping yourself moving over the duration of 20 minutes or 15 minutes, however many minutes, or however you want to track this. This is completely up to you, but to just track it written down, being like, okay, today I moved for 15 minutes. Felt great. Or I feel like, you know, maybe some little comments would be helpful there, to just write down how you felt about that experience, and then do it again the next day, and then do it again the next day, and then do it again the next day. And something that ties importantly to this is time, right? So do it at the same time every day. It's just easier for you to remember, and as a measure of habit as well. And it creates that cue, right? It creates that, hey, that thing. And of course you can change up where you're doing it and all of this stuff, but try to keep that commitment to yourself. And it's like something really, really small, like I'm going to go for a walk in my house, or I'm going for a walk where I'm allowed to, and obviously within the bounds of propriety and with masks and etc. at this current time, or if not, then however you're allowed to do it. But yeah, as Elle mentioned, keeping that discipline and keeping that kind of that for yourself. So it's kind of like you're being accountable for yourself. Another thing that might be helpful for that is to have an accountability partner.
Yes.
If you don't feel like you can, yes, really, if you really feel like you can't have, you can't, it's going to be difficult for you to do that, then get an accountability partner. Just have anybody with you to be like, okay, to be accountable for. This can be in addition to your habit tracking. So if it's somebody like that's not even with you, or living with you right now, you can be like, hey, I'm walking every day for, 21 days for 15 steps or whatever. And, so you start to make it a habit. And I say 21 days loosely because 21 days has been proven to be kind of the minimum time where it kind of lands. But there's many different studies around that as well. It depends on the person, etc. But let's stick with 21 days to start. So it seems less daunting. And 21 days is like pretty easy, and then work up from there. But an accountability partner really helps. I recently did a 7-day water fast, and that means that means
sorry, I did like 2 days the other day, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that again.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Oh wow. This is a whole other conversation for another day. I felt superhuman my 5th day, but yeah, we'll discuss this at a later time because I'm conscious of your time right now. But for that, for example, the 7 days of water fast, it was very difficult for me to do it on my own. I needed an accountability partner. I needed to be accountable to people to keep myself going through this. That's how I felt, at least. So I posted on my stories. I checked in the morning, and in the evening, I had 2 people that I was accountable for. I made 3 people do it with me. They all dropped out. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this on my
I
own.
paid.
I've got this. And then, yeah. And so I'm like, so having those people to be accountable with you is really important. And that's really it. And once you start recognizing, so say for example, we're going through your wheel right now, or you go through your wheel tonight, whenever you do it, and you start noticing little habits like, oh, I have really good habits in these sectors of the wheel that I'm doing right now. How can you invite more of it into your life? How can you do more of it? In terms of the bad habits that you're seeing, or let's not call them bad habits, but things that you can work on. So areas of improvement in terms of habits. What can you do what would you like to replace them with? I think that's a good first step to look at. So what would you like to replace that with? If it's binge eating chocolates like me at night, what would you replace that? What would you like to replace the chocolate with? Or what are baby steps that you can take to get there? Um, Also working towards that keystone habit that we discussed is great, because you're giving yourself small wins to work towards that eventual habit. So for example, I don't know if it's um, cutting down eating a certain thing, or if it's I want to lose weight or something, maybe having something like a journal that you keep, like a fitness journal or a weight tracking journal that you keep, and exercising like good habits out of that goal that you'd like to set for yourself. So what can I do to if this is my goal, which a lot of people frame goals on that, how can I get there? So this is my eventual goal. What are the steps that I can take to get there? So is it um, maybe sleeping earlier so that I have a little bit more energy in the morning and I can get more movement in? Is it in diet? Is it, like, what am I currently eating right now? What am I feeding and nourishing myself with that, I can cut out, or that's maybe not nourishing me, but it's just, it's comforting, and I'm finding comfort in it, but it's not necessarily bringing me towards my eventual goal of wanting to lose weight, for example. So things like that. If a habit that, or something that you want to cultivate, is like reading more, then maybe you can start with little articles, or even the really small snippets that you get online, on Instagram, whatever. I'm still a big fan of old school reading, but maybe reading little bits, 1 page per day.
Yeah.
1 or 2. So yeah, that's where I'm at with those.
I like what you
This
said, like
is
starting. So if you want to read more and starting with like a little article, I think I just want to address
yeah.
something that's really important. It's kind of like a rookie mistake, and it's certainly one that I made over and over and over until I failed so much. It's like, where's all my time going? I'm messing this up. Is you want to make sure that if you look at all 6 slices of your life and all the beautiful things that you want to do with those slices, there's a lot of strategies and a lot of habits that go into that. It may not be a good idea to do all of them. One thing that you want to do for your mental health is, in order to build anything, any routine, any habit, any skill, we cannot measure ourselves against the finish line. And so it's important to be mindful of what we take on, especially in the very beginning. Because in order to build that momentum, to build that willpower, that discipline, you need to feed yourself with little wins. For it to be sustainable, you actually do need the dopamine. You need to be enjoying yourself. You cannot be a slave to it. And like, there needs to be some way that you can fashion or have a reward at the end of something so that you find joy out of doing it. And in order to do that, sometimes it means you have to take super baby steps in the beginning. And this has been so helpful for me. If it's like you wanting to go to the gym, it's basically, well, maybe how do I get the motivation to do it? Well, maybe today, just every day this week, I literally just put my shoes on and I walk 5 minutes and then I just go back. I don't even get to the gym, or I don't even get to live. And then the next time I spend another 5 minutes doing something. You want to do small incremental, small acts of courage, 1 degree of improvement on top of the other. And that compounds. And the hardest part is actually when you look at habits, the hardest part in creating a behavior isn't the behavior itself. It's the lead up to it. And so you want to create these
Mm-hmm.
little wins, these little degrees of improvement that create this little ramp. And that ramp, over time that you build it, over time that you experience and practice it consistently, allows you to get to the actual action or the behavior or the doing or the habit in a more seamless manner. And so in this beginning, you may have all these different ideas of all these different things that you want to do and all these different habits you want to incorporate. I would say maybe just start with one per slice this week. Start with that. And start with some small degree of that, and see how your schedule is, because your schedule is going to have to adapt with it, and you're going to have to not tie yourself to, oh, I didn't get to make it, oh, I'm such a failure, because that's often what goes on in our head. Is to just be like, you know what, give yourself some self-compassion. So self-compassion is
Mm-hmm.
really, really useful in this, because you're finding your way. I'm still finding my way. And be like, you know what, okay, this didn't work out, but now I know that why I worked it this way and why it didn't work out, then what can I do differently? And that's where having a journal where you have that, that 6 slices and that measurement of 0 to 10. It's great to do that, like a check-in every week, to say, okay, this week, I would say maybe I did 8 out of 10 when it comes to my relationships. Why? Because, I spoke with these people in my life, but maybe I could do this, but also acknowledge yourself and say, you know what, this is pretty good. You have to acknowledge yourself, because the little wins are great with dopamine, but the little wins also come intentionally when you give them to yourself. Allow yourself permission to experience the satisfaction of knowing that, hey, I may not be at that end point, but I'm facing in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the steps.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
failing, but I'm taking the steps. I'm failing, even if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, facing in the direction. Because guess what? If we don't have habits set in place, if we are not strategic about the goals that we want or the direction that we want to head into in these aspects of our life, it is impossible to hit a target you can't see. And so we just, mindlessly or aimlessly roam around hoping that one day we stumble across the goal that we want. That's never going to happen. We have to be intentional about it.
And on intentions, I think that we have to really reconnect with why we are doing this, or why.
Yes.
So the why is very important. Why do I want to do this? So, for example, I worked with a client once, and it was like she wanted to lose weight. And I was like, and we had to delve deep into this, but we're like, why? What was the why in the end? And the why was much deeper than her just wanting to look good and be, feel good in her skin. She wanted to lose weight because she wanted to play with her kids. She wanted to be as active, like she didn't want her weight to be a hindrance when she was playing with her kids, and to be able to keep up with them, and to be able fit enough to be able to grow with them and play with them, etc. So the why is really, really important, and we always forget that. So the why, and also the intention. So if your intention, for example, is to go out or move or do something or whatever in that capacity, put your exercise clothes next to your bed. If that's what you're planning to do in the morning, put them right next to your bed. If you're going to journal, put it right next to your bed. So that's your cue. Like you have like these little things that you're going to put near you, and again, if that doesn't work for you, try something else. Life is all about the beauty of life is really all about experimentation and exploring and seeing what works for you, because what works for me, what works for Elle might not work for you. So just try things out. Maybe write post-its, or maybe if you start to notice, like for example, I used to write post-its all the time, and I'd stick them on like the mirror or whatever, and sometimes I read them and like, yeah, that's great. It's like, so I'd write some affirmations like, yes, Christina, you're doing well. So I'd write, Christina, you're awesome, and I'd be like, yeah, repeat this to myself in the mirror. But then there are certain times where these, like, I no longer look at them because I know what it says. So that doesn't work for me. So I had to try something else,
I think that's so good what you said about like trying, and life is all about that. We get so, myself included, we get so caught up on where we need to be that we don't pay attention to where we are. And yes, it sounds a little corny to be like, trust in the process. It's all about the journey, man. Peace. Yes, it is. But it's in the conquering, it's in the struggles, it's in the challenges and finding your own way. You know, when you see a kid running around through the fields or on his bike, there's all that fear and of falling down. But when they actually get their own way and their groove, there's that aha moment. And those beautiful aha moments are waiting for us throughout every point of the day. But in order to get them, we have to be bold enough to try new things. And unfortunately, in the culture scheme that we're at, it's always not enough time to try new things. And so we end up trying things in a way that someone else has tried, trying things in a way that is popular, trying things that we heard from someone else or we think is the right way to do things, rather than figuring out or making the decision for ourselves. And we have to be very careful how we do that, because if we find our groove through another person's way, we may end up climbing the mountain that wasn't ours to climb. It was someone else's mountain to begin with.
Yeah.
So that experimentation, come into it like a child, you know. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I'm going to try. I'm excited. I release all expectations that it has to. Either I win or I learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got to wrap.
We're gonna have to wrap up. Yeah,
it's the sun is setting, and
exactly. And I'm like getting darker, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you can still see me, but yeah, basically, I think that's all we have for you today. And thank you so much for joining us. And yes, we will leave this in a cheesy note with a quote. But you know what I actually learned recently about this quote is that I always thought that Aristotle said this, but we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. I always thought this was Aristotle, but apparently it was a different philosopher called Will Durant that said this.
Okay.
So, yeah. So,
can you say it one more time?
So Will. Wow, I don't know what happened just now. Will Durant.
We'll see Christina later today on the news.
Don't say that. Will Durant. I'm like,
Will Durant.
Yeah, Will Durant. And Aristotle, actually, it came from Aristotle's quote, "These virtues are formed in man by his doing the right actions." So I wanted to leave you with that quote, actually. So we just need to do the right actions, and we need to take it step by step, and we really need to just be gentle with ourselves, because everybody has a different process, and it's really about the journey and not the destination. So take it slowly, be gentle with yourself, and enjoy it. That's what life is about.
Yeah.
Just enjoying the process of discovery as you no longer see me. Goodbye.
And she slowly
I'm out. I am out.
But yeah, once again, guys, Christina will be back very, very soon. And we're going to take some time and talk about these habits. And if you have any questions, please make sure that you share it with us. You know, if you want to share this series with your friends, it'll be up on YouTube as well as on the Trifactor page. We'll definitely let you know about that. But yeah, so this is the community. You know, we want to hear about your struggles, about your triumphs, maybe your tactics and strategies, because, you know, we've also got a lot to learn. And let us know, maybe a story in your life that you think will be inspirational to other people. But yeah, so
share your anecdotes.
Yes, please. We need it.
Please.
Christina, thank you
they're
so
really
much
exciting.
for taking the time. I really appreciate it. The dream is hopefully when lockdown
so much fun doing this,
and you're allowed to come into Manila, that you're gonna come here to Puerto Galera with me, and we're gonna do some joint sessions.
Creating. Yeah, hopefully soon. But thank you so much for having me, you guys. Thank you, Elle.
Everyone, at the end of the session, if you see the Trifactor Engage page, so we're releasing Breakthrough in Action, which is an interactive workshop series. We're going to talk about habits, breaking through self-limiting beliefs, conditioning, and all these different aspects of well-being, and how to really allow ourselves to find practical tools and equip us turn it from philosophy into action, into lifestyle. So this course is
Mhm.
completely free. You'll see the details on the webpage. This is just really about creating awareness and resilience and well-being in the community. So share it with your friends, and let us know if you have any questions. Once again, Christina, we love you. Thank you so much for your insightful words and your story, and I can't wait till the next time.
Thank you. Sorry, I have like so much background noise in Bali right now,
No
but
worries.
thank you so much for having me. And yeah, if feel free to reach out. My contact details are somewhere down there, I think. And we also, at the Wellness Group, we are on Instagram at the Wellness Group, and I'm also on Instagram at Christina Sang. And we're actually going to be hosting a well-being festival online at the end of August. So please stay tuned for that. It's going to be really exciting.
I'm excited for
Cool.
that. Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
so much, Elle.
Have a
Bye,
beautiful
guys.
Namaskaram. Take it easy.
Bye.
God bless.